Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Real 1% podcast, where we're looking to change the narrative with all veteran stories and successes and failures, putting the information out there and changing the plagued veteran community to the people that can't do anything or being a broken veteran, or to being the people that, hey, these veterans are capable of doing anything they put their mind to, but together we're going to have to make a change, to say the least. So today I'm joined by Kevin Z. He's a retired major. He's had over 27 years of service. He's had 2 tours of Iraq and also been stationed in Omaha, Nebraska, among other places on active duty. He was started in armor and transportation as an enlisted soldier, then transitioned to the officer corps after 9/11. And now he's a serial entrepreneur, and he currently works with veterans, business leaders, trying to fight the stigma of being a broken vet. So without further ado, Kevin, how you living today, brother? I know you're cold, but other than that, how you doing?
Yeah. Other than that, everything's good. Yeah, I live in the middle of the country in Omaha, just outside of Omaha, Nebraska, and it's been snowing like crazy. And I know the whole country has kind of been getting hit hard this last week, but yeah, it's just hunker down time. I'm used to it. It's all right. It's all good.
Not bad. Hey, appreciate you being here. I saw something crazy the other day. It was saying like it's almost 100 and something degree difference in like North Dakota than it is in Florida, because right now it's like 61 here. North Dakota was like negative something. So it's crazy what's going on. Mine is Florida, man. So shout out to the Florida vets, keeping it warm at 60 and above. But what prompted you to join the military in the first place?
Honestly, it was just to pay for school. I grew up in a small town in the middle of Nebraska, 7,000 people. And there was a National Guard unit there in town. And the recruiter was really good. There was 11 guys from my graduating class that all joined that unit together. And a bunch of us went to basic training together and things like that. And, the plan for me was to, go to college, have the Guard pay for that, and then to be done. And after I got in and enjoyed it and just kept re-upping and enjoying the benefits and the camaraderie and all those kinds of things. And so stuck it out for, ended up being 27 years.
So when you first joined, did you think, you're just going to start going to school and maybe write out your first contract and then maybe just call it quits and go on from there at the beginning of your time?
I had no, I don't know that I really even thought that far ahead. It was just, oh, they've got great tuition assistance. I do a few years, do it on the weekends while I'm going to college, and it just really didn't have any thoughts of what was going to go on after that. I joined in 1988. So that was before there was much of anything going on. The thought of going to war or anything like that was, we were still in the middle of the Cold War at the time. And, our greatest threat was, World War III with Russia. And I was in armor, so I was a tank crew driver. And, they did one weekend, they did an exercise where they came in and pulled us all in and told us they were shipping us over to Germany and stuff. And I was like 17 or 18 at the time. And I freaked out. And a bunch of us did, because we thought it was real. And we just thought, oh no, this war isn't real, not since the 40s. I mean, Vietnam, but we just like, what? War with Russia? No way. But so, yeah, I had the military was not anything that I was thinking was a long-term plan for me.
Okay, fair enough. I think I went in with the same mindset, man. I'm like, I tried a couple of jobs at the same time. I'm like, okay, this isn't going to cut it, make a minimum wage. I got to I don't want to do with student debt. I don't have a scholarship. So let's try the Army thing, get over here, maybe get your school paid for and go from there. But I was like you get into it, you kind of either hate it or love it. At first I was loving it and, re-up, did a couple years, did a couple deployments like you, and, kind of put all the benefits on the back burner. But I'm curious to hear about your time in basic training once you stepped away from your hometown. It seems like half your graduating class all joined this military, since you're in such a small community. Looking back at it, what was like maybe one of the hardest things that you had to do in basic training, and also what was one of the best things that you got to accomplish as well?
Well, the camaraderie was, I had played on football teams and had some things like that, but never really anything big as far as camaraderie and teamwork and that kind of thing. So that was awesome. how basic training goes. They break you all down and build you up together. So that was awesome, but it was definitely shock treatment for the first day, and getting into it. And I went to Fort Knox, Kentucky for basic and AIT, and that transition, from basic to AIT, I had no idea what was going on. And, there was definitely, I want my mommy moments a couple times in there, like what the heck. It was good that I had a couple of classmates, like I said, that were there. But it wasn't all that bad. I mean, I ended up being a drill sergeant's kind of a teacher's pet through that. So it was fun. It was good. And it was, over the summer, I missed my first semester of college because of that. I did it in the fall and then just started school in January. So for the most part, it was good. I mean, of course, 30 some years ago, it's a lot of it's erased from my memory.
Yeah, right. You got that on. But so when you were at 19 kilo, was that what they called it back then too?
Yeah.
Tanker?
I was actually a 19 Echo when I started, which was
Echo.
the M60A3s. And then we switched over to the M1s after a couple years.
Tankers are like a lost art now. And I mean, even when I was in Germany, there was we had maybe 5 or 6 tankers, and they were kind of phasing that MOS out. It seemed. How was your time in the OSET? Like when you went to the AIT, did you have fun there? Doing live fires or whatever you guys did as tankers? Yeah.
That was, we didn't do a ton of it there at the AIT. I mean, we did a little bit, but we did driving and stuff. And yeah, those M60s were just monsters. And then for our annual trainings during the summers, we'd go either down to Fort Riley, Kansas, or out to Colorado, Fort Carson, and go, do firing ranges out there. And there's nothing like it. You can never describe to somebody that hasn't done it what it's like. You can watch all the videos you want, but until you're inside that thing shooting 120 millimeter main round gun, it's a lot of fun. And I mean, we were, adults in our mid late 20s, and it was just like being a little kid getting to do that kind of stuff. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and you're getting paid to do it, man. You can't beat the Army or the military getting out, shoot all that stuff that people pay thousands of dollars, or go out there to Las Vegas and get picked up in a Humvee. Hey, we were getting paid to do that, man. So looking back on it, it's not so bad after all.
For sure.
So you probably got a couple years away from your first deployment, right? You're living all right, and then talk about a little bit when you had got geared up to go to Iraq. What was that? What was your processing like? They told you that, hey, we're getting ready to go to war now.
Yeah. So if you back up even a little bit further, just quickly, the first, during Desert Storm, I was in school, and there was a lot of armor and stuff in that. And that was kind of when we saw the writing on the wall at the National Guard. It's like, they're not going to call up National Guard soldiers to go get in an M1 and go on the front lines against an unknown. We didn't really know what the Revolutionary Guard was going to do. So we were kind of on alert, but they never called us up, which is why after that initial Desert Storm war that they took our tanks away from us and we transitioned to transportation. So yeah, fast forward, to OIF one. We went over in, I think, 2003. So it was fairly early. And we were a transportation unit. But yeah, when they called and, said we were going, there was a lot of unknowns at that point. That was before the IEDs were really starting to hit. But we just really didn't know. And, we were a bunch of rednecks from middle of Nebraska gearing up to, we went to Fort Riley and geared up and got sent over there. Yeah, we had no idea. There was fear and trepidation, but we had a good tight group of guys. A lot of them, again, we all had known each other. We were not a unit that were thrown together. The reserves, they pull people from all over to create a full unit. We were a full unit that had been training together for years. And so, we were ready. We were like, okay, this is what we're trained to do, and let's go. So some trepidation for sure, especially with the families. That was, in hindsight, looking back, for us, we were worried about ourselves, but as we've all learned over the years, the families back at home bared the brunt of it, from the separation and having to continue to raise families and deal with all that baloney while we were gone. And, eating on KBR, and we knew we were going to sleep and eat, and somebody was doing our laundry. And so.
You said that was 2003 then when you first went?
Yeah, 0304. Yeah, that was my first. And we were a transportation unit, and we went over to Kuwait. And when we got there, the unit that we were supposed to replace in Iraq got sent home, and they decided they weren't going to replace them because we were all driving thin-skinned trucks and Humvees. That was in the early days of no armor. And they decided they were not going to send us to Iraq. And so we sat down in Kuwait, and the company commander I was with, I was the XO at the time, so I'd already transitioned over to the officer corps. And my company commander was like, "We are not going home. We have spent all this time, all this training. We are going to stay here. We're going to go. We're going to do something." So he went like door knocking to battalion commanders, like, "Hey, do you guys need a trans unit?" And that's how it worked. He and I just went around and talked to all kinds of units, and we finally found a transportation battalion. They're like, "Yeah, we can figure out a way to put you guys to work." So that's what we did. And my first deployment, about the first 6 months, all we did was we ran all the yards down in Kuwait, where the equipment was coming in and out, the ports and the air base and some of the training spots, handling all the connexes and stuff like that. And so I got bored because I was an XO of a trans unit that wasn't doing a whole lot. So there was a general up at down at Arifjan that needed a general's aide. And so I raised my hand and got picked to go do that. So for the second half of my tour, I was a general's aide. And everybody makes fun of it, but you know what? It was awesome. It was great. He was in charge of all the transportation in and out of Kuwait by air, land, sea. And so, man, I spent so much time on helicopters, airplanes, jets, ships, you name it. I got to go kind of see how that whole, the big transportation system worked. And I spent time I had dinners at Kuwaiti princes' houses, because we were negotiating for use of the ports and the rail lines and the roads. And so we were hobnobbing with those guys trying to negotiate that. And I was just like personal security for the general. It was just him and I would go out, and I'd have to protect him. And then whenever they'd ask him something about truck, like convoys and stuff, he'd always turn to me and go, "Hey, Kevin, help me out here." So that was how I spent my first tour. It wasn't a lot of course, we attended a lot of funerals too while we were there, because I don't remember how many soldiers were in the transportation corps down in Kuwait, but that's when the IEDs were just starting. And so there was a lot of roadside bombs and stuff. And there was not a lot, but there was quite a few people that were killed from the IEDs. And so we went and visited funerals and did a lot of that kind of stuff too. So that was definitely eye-opening.
Thanks. Yeah, definitely an eventful deployment, to say the least. Doing door-to-door sales to sell your transportation company, and then doing I guess the general's aid thing could go any which way. You got a cool general, and I mean, you seem like you have a ton of stories and a ton of memories, and that's awesome, man. Because I mean, there's nothing that can beat that. Now, I was a cook in the Army, and I know that we could be a general's aide too, but you have to go to the class. But like I've known a couple of people that have done that, and they said the same thing. They loved it. They say sometimes the wife could be a pain, but the wife's not coming to Kuwait on a deployment, so I guess you didn't have to really worry about that, which is good.
Yeah, I was good friends with the general's wife. She would email me and call me, and she would like, "Kevin, would you tell Bill this and that and the other thing?" And so I was yeah, it was good, but there were definitely there were so many generals in the building that I worked in. There was probably 18 different generals. Oh, wow. And there was a lot of aides that did not have the experience that I did. They had horrible experiences because the guys were toxic leaders, and I was lucky. I had a good guy from Georgia, and it was a good experience.
That's good. So it goes both ways because you saw it full effect.
Yes.
Looking back on I rewind a little bit back to the soft shell Humvees, like so back in the day, I didn't join the Army until 2007, but I know from stories that like the best up armor that you guys had was like pretty much putting sandbags down, right, on like the ground.
So
and stuff like that. Like
we had Vietnam era manuals, because we were driving 800 series trucks and then the soft-sided Humvees. And yeah, those manuals have pictures of like how to up armor these trucks. And it was sandbags,
Yeah. Right.
stack them up by the doors, put them down underneath your feet, and things like that. And that was back, the training that we'd go through. We went through training lanes in Kuwait, and they would be like, you got to be a porcupine. Everybody's got to have their rifles out the windows to keep people at bay, which was, again, in hindsight, was ridiculous. I was actually, if you look this up on YouTube or on the internet, Donald Rumsfeld was the Secretary of Defense, and he came over to Kuwait, and he got on stage and was taught. People were yelling at him, and I was there kind of on the side of the stage. I've got some pictures of him from the side there, but obviously the government had no clue how bad it was. And he was trying to, set everybody's mind at ease. But I think that's where he really got the earful that like, okay, we have to do something about this. Cause our maintenance guys they were digging through trash heaps looking for steel. And they were just trying to weld it on the sides of these Humvees just to try to give them a little and on these trucks. And it was a
crazy,
kind of a Mad Max crazy time. Yeah.
So what was going through your mind? Because you did probably see, like, I'm sure you probably seen some of the Humvees that got blown up, that got pulled in from Iraq, or maybe you saw pictures or saw them in person. But like, if you did, what was going through your mind when you're like, you guys are trying to combat these bombs with sand, essentially? Like, what was being talked about then?
There was a lot of fear, but because in running those yards down in Kuwait, that was everything coming in and out, and that included trash and stuff. And so, yeah, I saw a lot of Humvees that were looked like a tin can that you'd stepped on, or twisted, or pulled apart, or you see that and you're like, and then they put you in one of those and say, okay, you're leading a convoy to Baghdad. What?
Yeah, hold on a minute. Hold on. Let's get on that helicopter, man.
Yeah. So, I mean, the convoys slowed down a little bit, and they were trying to figure out different ways to get supplies in there. They were using airplanes and stuff and helicopters to try to get stuff in a different way. But they just kept pushing, and they did a lot of up arming. They kind of came up with an SOP for how to up armor those trucks. And I mean, they were all squatted down because they were overloading the suspension and stuff. But yeah, for the guys that were, getting in those convoys and going, there was a lot of trepidation. I mean, it was almost like rolling the dice. It was like, well, if it's my day, it's my day. Let's go. So,
jeez. What so did you had a MOB up before that deployment? Were you on National Guard at that time? Or were you active duty?
I was National Guard at that time.
Okay, so you had to do your MOB, and then you went over for like a year, or did you go longer than a year and then you had to come back and demob? What was your time looking like?
I think our total time away from home was 14 months.
A long time, man.
Yeah. So there, and there was I think we did, I can't remember how long we did at Fort Riley, maybe a couple of months. And then coming back, we went to Fort McCoy up in Wisconsin and did maybe a couple of weeks there of demob. So
I got to ask you, I don't think I've ever asked anybody first. I know I deployed with National Guard and Reserve units, but like, it must kill you guys to like know that you're going home, but at the same time, you got to go to Fort McCoy and wait those couple weeks, right? Like you're done with the deployment, but it's like, all right, we got to do another couple more weeks. What was going through your mind then? You just ready to get home and see your family?
Oh yeah. Because you're that close, I live in Omaha, and at the time, I guess I was out in the middle of the state, but yeah, McCoy's only a day's drive away from here. And yeah, everybody's chomping at the bit, just like, come on, just, and it was in the way the way the military is, they drag everything out and all the briefings and shots and medical records and CIF and all that baloney. It was just, it's especially on the way home. Going out, it was kind of the same, but because going out was actually, now that I remember, is opening up some memories I had kind of forgotten.
You remember now.
Yeah, when we went to Fort Riley, we didn't have a for sure deployment date. So we went down there and then we sat, and they're like, well, they're going to delay us 2 more weeks. So we're going to let your family come down and visit for the weekend. And
But they already
then
said their goodbyes, though. They already said their initial
right.
goodbyes, right?
And then we had to say
Yeah.
goodbye again. And I think we did that twice while we were down there. So it's like I had to say goodbye 3 times. And it was just like, it's just like, just stop letting the families come is what we started saying. I mean, we love our families and yes, we want to see them, but this is hard to say goodbye multiple times for the same deployment. So
it's like putting salt on an open wound or something like that.
right.
You know, like you did it once and you did it again. That's wild, man. So you came home, you got through the deployment. When did you find out that you were going back?
So the second deployment was, when did I go? 2010 to 11, I believe. So by that point, I had moved on from the transportation unit and actually transitioned into intelligence, military intelligence. So my captain's career course was down in Fort Huachuca in Arizona for intel. So I ended up becoming the assistant S2 for a battlefield surveillance brigade, which was kind of a newer type thing. And in fact, I think they may have done away with them again, but we had all the ints, they call it, you know, HUMINT and SIGINT and GEOINT, and we had all those. So my boss and I ran a fusion cell of intel operators. And so that, I'm trying to remember that. I don't even remember the call. I think it was a long time coming, if I remember right. It was like, we knew like 18 months before we went that we were going. So we had because at that, when you're talking a brigade headquarters, they have to know who the next unit is coming, you know, every 12 months, who the next unit is coming. So we had a long run up to that. So I was running an insurance agency at the time, and I wasn't big or anything. And so they asked me if I'd be willing to come on and help with the MOB. So I did. I just went on Title 10 orders and went in and helped with all the training and coordinating for getting us over there the second time. So
how was it for you? I was going to ask you about your civilian side of your life, and how was it balancing what you're doing on the civilian side and the military side throughout all your years of service?
It was up through the first deployment. It wasn't bad. I mean, it wasn't a big deal because it was weekends and a couple weekends in the month. And the employers that I was working for at the time were, you know, all gung ho and red, white, and blue. And so they loved the fact that they had an employee that was in the military. So first deployment came back. That was great. And then, you know, as I transitioned into intel and to the brigade headquarters, the requirements became a lot heavier. And so I had worked corporate America. I was an assistant vice president for a Fortune 500 company, but it just got to be too much to handle, to balance both, which is when I left and started that insurance agency, because I needed a little more flexibility. But of course, I didn't want the flexibility of, oh, you're an owner of a company, and oh, by the way, you're going to be gone for a year. That didn't work out so well. So that's when I said, you know what, I'm just going to go all in. And if they needed help on the full-time side, I'd go help. So I pretty much at that point had to kind of make the decision on whether I was going to do the military or be civilian at that point. So I leaned into the military at that point.
How was your time gearing up for that second deployment to Iraq and just going full-fledged towards the military side of things?
Yeah, man, you're bringing up, there's a lot of this stuff that I've like forgotten about, but it was okay. My boss, the S2, I was a captain, and Major Kilgore, my boss, was great. We were good friends. All of our soldiers, our fusion cell soldiers, were awesome. Our brigade commander was awful.
Damn, always one.
He was a guy that had worked out at Guard Bureau, and he was a Fulbright colonel at Guard Bureau, working in DC, part of the, you know, that system out there. And if he was ever going to get promoted, he had to have a command, and he hadn't had one yet. And so somebody had the bright idea to send him out to Nebraska and take an intel brigade over to Iraq. It was from a command point of view, it was awful. I mean, if you look up toxic leader in the dictionary, this guy's picture is there. He was he got relieved of command halfway through our tour in Iraq. While we were in Iraq, he got relieved of command. So the gear up was not
major mess up.
Yeah, it was, the gear up for it was it was very uncomfortable, but it was almost like having a drill sergeant though. We kind of had the captain's mafia, we called it, all the 03s and all the 04s stuck together. And of course, all the enlisted soldiers, we kind of just all gelled as a team. It's just like, if we're going to go, we got to count on each other because we can't count on this Yahoo. So, yeah, it was pretty painful. And then the first half of our second deployment was pins and needles and all the time. He was firing people left and right, and it just sending people off to different bases. And I mean, you could do a movie about that first half of that deployment. So
we might have to do that one day. But now that's crazy because he's at the top of his food chain, right? And he's the one making all these crazy decisions. But really, if you could take a vote like a Survivor's Island, you would have voted his ass off, right?
Oh yeah, he would have been gone.
Like he would have been gone, not everybody else. So that's crazy how the
it created some rifts. We were where people were trying to protect their own butts in, because he had a lot of power. Right. OERs and things like that. And so there were some people that supported what he was doing and some people that didn't. And so then it was kind of the haves and the have nots for a little while until he left, and then it was all good. So, but yeah, it was an unneeded, unnecessary added stress to a deployment. We were in Iraq. We were in Talil, on the air base there in Talil.
How was the mission that you guys had going on, minus the Yahoo? Like once all that cleared up and the smoke cleared and dust settled.
Yeah, the Battlefield Surveillance Brigade mission was pretty awesome. It was pretty cool. Like I said, we had guys that were watching UAV footage. We had people that were doing signal stuff. We had guys on the ground doing HUMIT. And I sat in a cell that got all of that. And we had, analysts that would take all this information, and we would have to create briefs that would be clear up to the general of the army up there in Baghdad, briefing what was going on in southern Iraq. So it was really interesting, just seeing how things unfolded. And, I had the highest level TSSCI, all the alphabet soup behind, access to pretty much everything. And got to see a lot of neat stuff. So, and a lot of scary stuff too.
Well, at least you didn't have to go back to see Humvees with sandbags on it. You got to see MRAPs and Max Pros and stuff like that at that time. So how was that, seeing that, saying, damn, at least we got a nice ride this time?
Yeah. We definitely had all the up armors and the LRAP. Yeah, everything was up armored by that point, pretty much. So
looking back at it now, go ahead, my bad, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's fine.
Looking back at that deployment now, what was like one of the craziest stories or something that you went through, having all that information fed down the pipeline? Like, what was something that sticks out to you, if anything?
Well, there's a lot of things that I can't talk about, but of course,
one that maybe declassified, maybe.
Yeah, I don't want to do that, but gosh, there's a couple stories of the intel itself was cool, but again, I can't talk about a lot of that. But it just, some of the stuff that came down where people were freaking out about different things that we would see, and then we'd really dig into it and find out, one time we had something that was showing up on some kind of radar, and it ended up being like a flock of birds, and everybody was panicking, thinking something was coming in from Iran or something. And everybody's running around going, damn. Oh my God, it was like, oh no, it's a bunch of missiles coming in from Iran, and it was like Pelicans or something. Things like that. And then, another like crazy story. I was up in, was it Balad, which was north of Baghdad. I was up there for a month with a battalion out of Utah. And we were playing poker at the USO, and they started shelling us. And, we were in the middle of a poker game sitting outside this USO, and we're all like, nobody move your cards. We were all worried about our poker game more than the missiles and the artillery shells that were landing around us. And it's just, I'm sure lots of people have a lot of crazy stories. I didn't really, there was a couple times we got shelled down in Tallil where they got close with missiles and hit a couple of the chews that the guys were living in, but nothing really, really bad. One of the things that I think I've learned from that is, you talk about PTSD, and one of the first questions when you're evaluated for that, which I was and was determined not to have it, but was, they say, have you ever seen a dead body? And I couldn't remember that I had or hadn't at the time. But I think a lot of PTSD comes from your body gets used to, and this is different. It's not mental, it's maybe physiological. Your body has this heightened sense of awareness every single day when you're in that environment. You're just a little bit amped up and you feel it and you're just like, all the time. And you come home and you don't have that anymore, which is, the first thing I did when I came home from my first deployment was bought a motorcycle. And not really understanding why, because I wasn't really a motorcycle guy, but it was like the adrenaline and the high from just that feeling of getting your dopamine going or whatever. And so that was a big thing that for me is looking back, I'm definitely a different person. And it was lots of different reasons, but that was one of the major things is I just have a different level of awareness of everything that's going on around me because I went through that a couple of times.
So after your second deployment, you got over like 22 years in. So did you ever start thinking about, life after the service and life after deployment? What, I know you're a serial entrepreneur. Did you start doing all that while you were in the service, or was that something that came on after?
So I had an interesting opportunity while I was on my second deployment there. And I mentioned, and you mentioned it earlier, that I did some time at Offutt Air Force Base. So I was there actually for 3 years on active duty, but as part of the National Guard. So it was Title 10 active duty, but I was so I knew about this mission because way back on 9/11, when I was still a transportation, I was an E6 truck driver on 9/11, and we were doing a training with an organization out of Offutt, and we were just driving down the road in South Dakota, and all this stuff about 9/11 started coming over the radio, and we thought it was part of the exercise. We didn't think it was real. Turns out it was real, and with all the things that came out of that, well, we were again part of this mission, and I was so impressed by the way the mission was run by the Air Force at the time. I was like, man, it'd be cool to be part of that someday. So fast forward, 10 years, I knew somebody that was on that mission. He was my company commander when I was we first got our trucks. And so I got a hold of him. I said, hey, how do I set myself up to get on this? And so we sat down, had coffee, and before the deployment, and just while we were there, the position was coming open. And so I applied for it. So pretty much as soon as I came home from my second deployment, I came home and told my wife, I said, hey, we were living south of Lincoln. And I said, hey, we're moving. We need to move closer to Offutt because I've got this 3-year gig now, active duty, working at Offutt Air Force Base. So, so while I was there, so what I was part of a flight crew, it's called the NAOC, or National Airborne Operations Center. So it's the big 747 that kind of looks like Air Force One. So that was my office for 3 years. While I was there, I had a lot of downtime. And so I was reading a lot of books. When I was on watch, I'd be reading a lot of books, and I'd read a lot of books about entrepreneurship. And that's really when I started thinking, I need to figure out what I'm going to do when I'm done with this. Because I was getting a little bit older, spent a lot of time away from my family already. And the next step for me was to go to ILE down at Fort Leavenworth, Fort Leavenworth, to go to ILE, which was a 6-month-long school to be able to be promotable to major. And I just was like, nope, I'm done. I am done doing MDMP. I don't want to do any more of that stuff. I just am done. So I made the decision at that point that I needed to retire. So I started scrambling and kind of looking like, what's my next step? What am I going to do? Because I had an insurance agency before my second deployment. So I already had the bug a little bit. So I knew that I wasn't going to go back and do corporate America. I wasn't going to go back and work for somebody else necessarily. I mean, I've still worked for other people a couple times. And even when you're a business owner, you're always working for a customer. So you always have a boss. But
That's true.
yeah, I did a lot of reading there. And that's kind of when I set myself up and decided that I was going to do entrepreneurship. So I started an Amazon business where I was flipping stuff on Amazon, you know, just a third-party seller buying stuff on sale at Target and Walmart and selling it on Amazon for triple the price. Did that for a while. And then I also got my realtor. So I started buying rental properties and got my realtor's license and did the realtor thing for a while. So yeah, I came out hot. As soon as I retired from the military, I was hit the ground running doing the Amazon thing and the real estate.
So you're hitting them with the retail arbitrage, man. That's not bad. I'm on eBay myself, so I do the same thing, man. I got the clothing, and I'm trying to do like you. I'm gonna get my real estate license in Florida, and I got one rental now, and I plan on using the money from eBay to roll into some rental properties. So
there you go.
Looks like I got a little mentor I can hit up,
yeah,
man, on the
go.
side now. So there we go.
You are on the right path. Yeah. We
what
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say
what. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, right. Internet delays. Forgot. Yeah, I owned. I was flipping houses, and I owned 5 rental properties at one time, and I ended up selling them all. And I'm kicking myself every day for selling them. It just at the time it made sense. It was the right move for us, but I definitely wish I had. I'd probably be about $1 million richer if I still had those properties. So that's definitely a good way to go.
What were some of the books that you were reading that kind of set the tone for you? And two-part question on that. What did the plan of attack look like for you leaving the military, if any?
So I read, oh gosh, what the heck is his name? The book was called Arbitrage, I think. I got it on Amazon, and Chris, what the heck was his name? I can't remember. But yeah, I read that book and I was like, oh, I am so in on this. The real estate was just, my wife and I had moved several times before, and we had a really good realtor that we worked with, an older dude who had 12 houses. And like on the 3rd house that we bought with him, he told me, he said, you need to start holding on to these houses instead of selling them and turn them into rentals. And so he kind of piqued my interest there. And that's really what got me into the real estate. We had bought and sold a few houses. I had worked construction too in high school and in college. I'd done, siding, roofing, electrical, and that kind of stuff. So I had a little bit of in the real estate where I knew what I was doing, at least enough to be dangerous. So my dad and I started flipping houses, had a blast doing it. So yeah, I don't remember. I'm sure I read some books, but that's been long enough ago that I can't remember what they were. So
no, it's all good. So leaving the military then as like, a upper echelon officer, you did 27 years in the military, some deployment, some active duty, working around generals. Was anyone there for you for the exit? Or was it like, hey, I'm kind of on my own on this. Did you do anything with the VA claim? Did you take advantage of leaving, or like looking back on it? What was your outlook, or what was your take on leaving the military?
Yeah, mine was sloppy. My exit was very, very sloppy. So after my active duty time at Offutt, I went back and worked full time as a federal technician in Lincoln at Joint Force Headquarters for the Nebraska Guard. Worked as a resource manager. And so I still did weekends as a soldier. And then I did full time as an employee of the Guard. And then when it came down where I was going to have to go to ILE, they told me they were going to move me to become the S2 of that brigade again under a commander that he and I didn't really see eye to eye. He didn't really like me that much. And again, I was like, I don't want to go to school. I don't know if I want to work for this guy. And then I just all of a sudden walked into my boss one day and said, I'm done. I'm retiring. And he leaned over and grabbed his knees and went, what? I just got you trained. So, and I mean, I didn't get anything. I didn't get a ceremony. I didn't get like the normal certificates. I got them. About a year and a half later, I got a phone call from the HR guy saying, hey, are you ever going to pick this stuff up, your retirement stuff? There was no come in front of
Nothing.
the formation. Thanks for your service. Nothing. It was like, don't
Maybe we'll have to have one for you and I, because I didn't get one either. So
get
maybe
one
we
yet.
can just link up and do one, man. One for
Yeah.
one. We could trade off certificates. But yeah, how'd that make you feel after doing all that time in the military? Did you just say you didn't really care because you're leaving anyways, or like even with the VA, did you have any VA? Did you get to do your medical benefits while you were still in, or is that something you learned about once you got out of service?
It was, so I retired in 2015. I just last year got a VA rating.
Damn.
So yeah, so here, I'm one of those guys. I had little things that happened, broke this, twisted this, nothing that was, debilitating, nothing that I thought, I didn't really, the PTSD thing really wasn't a thing for me. And so there was really no requirement. So when I got out of active duty, I went right back to the Guard. And then when you get out of the Guard, they don't do like this big, long medical processing, because I have 27 years, but they're not 27 active duty years. So I'm not drawing retirement yet. I will at age 59. So yeah, it was very unceremonial, and it was very much like there was very little, like there was paperwork. There was a little bit of paperwork, but there was no, hey, you need to go apply for this or that. I might have got a couple of notes or something, and at the time I was just like, I'm fine. I'm good. I don't need anything.
Right.
And so yeah, it was I didn't have anybody that really, and in the officer corps, there's a lot of, you better figure it out yourself. You need to take care of yourself for the most part. And I just didn't know what I didn't know at the time. So
absolutely, yeah.
So if you fast forward, got out of the military, I did the arbitrage thing, and then eventually I ended up being an Amazon delivery service partner. So with my experience in the transportation industry, the military, and then I had a connection with Amazon, they brought me on as a so I did AMXL, which was extra large stuff. So I had 14 trucks and 30 employees, and we were doing deliveries for Amazon for large stuff. Well, one of the guys that worked for Amazon was a Marine, a retired Marine, and he kept asking me, what's my rating? And he's like, and I said, oh, I'm nothing. I've never, and he goes, what? Are you kidding me? And so he kept prodding me. And he's like, dude, at least just go get evaluated, go to the VA, just get a checkup, just see what's going on. Well, through the whole process, I'm at 80%, because I had enough things. I had enough things in my record that were service connected, that connected all the dots. And lo and behold, I ended up at 80%. And I still, to this point, there are times when I'm like, I'm fine. I'm not broken, which, is some of the stuff that we were talking about earlier, that I'm stand up. I don't need help. There's a lot of other vets that need a lot more help in the physical and mental realm than I do. So there was almost like embarrassment and just a lot of hesitation to even apply for it. So there's a little bit of maybe guilt, but I mean, I still try to tell myself, hey, listen, you did 27 years, bro.
You got devil's advocate, dude. You got like one telling you that on one shoulder, another telling you. I think it's there for everybody, man. You're not taking away from anybody. As you just said, when we're in the military, oh, you're weak if you go to sick call. Drink water, take a knee, take ibuprofen. If you go to sick
dirt
call,
in it.
Yeah, you know what I mean. And if you're whether you're an officer, I know big time in the flight field. If you go to sick call and you talk about mental health, they're not going to let you fly anymore. And a lot of people don't want to lose that job. But in all reality, the day will come when we have to transition away from the military, whether you do 27 years or 2 years. So, I mean, good for you and good for that Marine. Shout out to that Marine that, asked that question. That's sometimes people don't like to talk about it, but, when you're in the military, we talk about everything between the sun and the moon about, life and service, but there's not a lot of people that are educated on getting out. So, I mean, what did you feel like when you got the 80% rating? I mean, it's not bad. It's kind of like a retirement check before waiting to get to 59.
Yeah. It was nice. It was a good feeling. I don't want to have to depend on it, and I don't.
Absolutely.
But it's just a nice little, like my lower back, we had a hard landing when I was at the NAOC, and I was off flight duty for like you were saying, I was off flight duty for 2 weeks, and I wanted to get back as soon as possible because I just wanted to get my job. And that's one of the things. I still have lower back pain today. And I'm thinking, that's worth something. I was part of this crew that was doing a big mission, and I got hurt doing that. And so, okay, so yeah, it's good. It's not something I go around and brag about or anything. It's just, it is what it is.
No, but you did what you did, and you get compensated for it. It's nothing to say you're not like you can't do another job. It's just connected, and you move on with it. So, what was the number one seller, or what was some of the big sellers that you were able to flip on Amazon when you got that venture going? Looking back on it,
Elsa dolls from Frozen.
Frozen dolls, damn. Where'd you get them? Toys R Us or something like that, or where you get them at?
Everywhere. Target. Yeah, Toys R Us, Walmart. So I had a old used Honda Odyssey, and I took all the seats out of it, and I would just go shopping. And I got I knew where everything was, where all the clearance racks were, and I would just I would hit every Target, every Walmart, Big Lots in Lincoln and Omaha every week. I'd hit every single store, and there was times I'd have 7 carts full of stuff, and I was by myself. And yeah, Elsa dolls, I was buying them for like $16 and selling them for $68 or something like that when they were hot.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was like everyone I could get. Yeah, we had crazy stuff. I was on a first name basis with my UPS guy. My garage, my boys were helping me. We were, pulling price tags off of stuff. And it was quite the little operation we had going. There's guys that do that on a huge scale.
Oh yeah, I'm part of this reselling group, and they got the #1 video game seller. The dude doesn't even leave his house, but he sells multi-millions a year on an arbitrage and video games, and it's definitely a business venture. I'm doing the same thing as you are. I got my garage set up as a warehouse. Why not, man? You know what I'm saying? You get the business right off, you get all this. So now it's cool to talk to someone. I think you're probably the first veteran that told me they did like Amazon. So it's cool to talk to someone with a different, same mindset, thinking outside the box, and just I don't know, man. You go shopping, you get credit card points, you send it off to Amazon. They probably do the dirty work of getting it out to the customer, unless you did fulfillment by yourself. But either way, man, it's not bad to not have to leave the house and just go shopping for work. So
yeah, it was fun. It got a little old after a while, but it was fun while it lasted.
So when you let's talk a little bit about what you're doing now with the Warriors Unleashed. You can go to www.warriorsunleashed.com. The link does work. I went on it last night, so that's working.
It was broken yesterday, but I got it fixed. Yeah. So yeah, like I said, I've been in entrepreneurship, and I was doing the Amazon thing with the DSP and doing the deliveries, and I also started a mobile maintenance detailing and maintenance company, and was running that for a while, and ran into some issues with the franchisor, and we're dealing with all of that right now. And through that whole process, I was part of a motorcycle group, an association of vets, Combat Veterans Motorcycle Association, and we were helping vets that were homeless and helping them get into housing, and getting them furniture and stuff like that. And I'm friends with some guys that run other veterans charities. And I was doing pretty well financially, and I was seeing all these organizations that were helping vets, and it was all not 100%, but for the most part, it was to help broken vets, which there's a lot. There's the 22 initiative, and just tons of awesome things out there. And I thought, none of those are any services that I need. But I'm a veteran, and I've got some very unique skills and challenges because of my time in the military. But I am broken. I'm 80% disabled, but I'm a performer, and I'm out there crushing it. And there's a lot of other guys out there that I think are the same or similar. There's a lot of really successful veteran businesses out there. And for the most part, those are guys that are, they don't, when they said you identify as a business owner or as a veteran. And these are guys that mostly will say they identify as a business owner or as an entrepreneur first. The veteran is part of their history and obviously part of who they are. And there's nothing wrong with it. And it's nothing that we're embarrassed about or anything. I'm very proud of my military service, and I know they are too. But there's a different set of challenges when you're running a business in the civilian world, because you can't just transition, especially like active duty. When you go into the civilian world, it's just a different world. How you talk to people, how you deal with employees, how you deal with your family, your spouse, and all those things are different than being in the military. And I just felt really drawn because I was one of those. I'm like, I'm a vet, absolutely, but I'm not broken, and I don't need those services, but I need a little guidance and help and like pump me up. And how do I navigate this civilian business world? And so I just became very passionate about that and just doing it myself. And I still have a lot of interaction with a lot of other vets. And I just had so many of them asking me questions. Well, how do you do this? And what do you do this? How do you balance this with what you've learned in the military? And I just got more and more momentum in that direction and just thought, man, there's something to this. There's just a lot of things that we all struggle with. And I work just with men right now. I've had people give me a lot of crap with that. What about women veterans? Yeah. But you know what? I have a very unique set of things that I've had to deal with in my journey as a man. My relationship with my wife, is very unique. And if I were to try to talk to somebody to a female about her relationship with her husband, it's different. There's a whole different conversation. So I went through some dark times in all domains of my life. I mean, I gained a lot of weight. My wife and I were separated for 4 months, and I had to kind of figure out how to navigate all that stuff. And you know what? I did. I've been married for 29 years and was almost not married about 3 times in there. But especially this last time, about 3 years ago, I kind of just figured out a different operating system. I figured out how to just pull my pants up, zip them up the front and like figure out how to do life differently. I don't have a general or a colonel or a platoon leader, platoon sergeant telling me what to do, how to do it anymore, And yeah, in the Guard, I was doing business too, but there was just some unique things. And especially when I started having employees, you can't just say drop and give me 20 and somebody's being a dope. You can't do that. Right. You can, but they're not going to be your employee anymore, or you're going to get sued for harassment or whatever. So, that was different. And then, I just learned some really awesome ways my marriage now is as good as it's ever been after 29 years. And I've heard, so many people in my age range, which, once you've retired from the military, we're also empty nesters. Both of our boys are out of the home. And when your kids all leave the house, it's a whole different world when it's just back to you and your wife again. And I learned how to navigate that. And again, I am so passionate about, I hate seeing so many people, guys, veterans especially, that are giving up. And, the whole suicide thing, a lot of that is service connected, but a lot of it's just not understanding you're strong and you've got a lot to offer. You just need to learn how to kind of tweak your operating system to live well now, for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And don't
different way.
Yeah. Don't sit at home every night and sedate with alcohol and drugs and porn and, just maybe have a conversation with your wife and maybe she won't call you an asshole. Maybe you might get laid every once in a while, if you actually, pour into your wife a little bit, maybe you might get some reciprocation. So
absolutely,
it's those kinds of things. And I've learned how to navigate that, and it went so well. And I feel so strongly about it. And other people around me, I started giving them hints and tricks and stuff. And they're like, man, hey, let's talk about that. And it just kind of morphed into this, it's like life coaching type stuff. But I've got a very good, operating system that works for me. I've got certain things that I do every day, and I wake up and I get shit done, and I'm in power, and it's awesome. And I'm using a lot of the skills and things that I learned in the military. And so I just felt called to do the same for other people instead of just holding it to myself. I'm an introvert. I'm a severe introvert. I like sitting in my office and being by myself and not talking. I go to, going to parties and weddings are very uncomfortable for me, but I'm like, don't be selfish. This is my self-talk, don't be selfish. You've got something there's guys out there that need what you know. And so it's time to share that. So that's kind of the precipice of going in that direction.
So going back to the dark times that you faced yourself, what was I guess the determining factor that helped you get out of that? When did you have like that aha moment, like, all right, now I got to pull my pants up, zip them up, and get on with life. I can't sit here and dwell in this darkness. I got to return to the light. Like, was it one thing? Was it a combination of things? Talk a little bit about that if you don't mind.
Well, when you get out of the military, you're forced to pass a PT test and wait every year, right? So as soon as you get out, I mean, not everybody, but a lot of guys just start letting that go to hell. And
Yeah.
and so that was one thing. I don't know if I really went in dark, but I mean, I just didn't feel good about that. But ultimately, it was my relationship with my wife. It was I was a controller, a fixer. That's just kind of my personality. Military, officer, lead, however that. And I was never, I wasn't an awesome leader in the military. I got by. But I'd go on deployment, I come home, and dad's home. I'm in charge again. I did that on first deployment. I did that on my second deployment. I was gone, every other week while I was at NAOC. And my wife found her identity in being a mom more than being a wife. And then, like I said, once they got into high school and were moving on, I think she looked at me and was like, I've put up with you for all this time being this way, and I don't want to put up with that anymore. And so, we struggled for several months to the point where I was just trying to fix it, and just pushed her away. And so that was that was the deepest, like, and again, I saw other people go through that exact same situation and immediately went to divorce. And after 26 years of marriage at that point, I was not willing to give up. And so I fought my ass off through that point. And, I reached out to buddies, but for the most part, I just poured into myself. I decided, because all my energy was focused out on everybody else, fixing her, fixing my kids, fixing my soldiers, fixing my employees, taking care of them, controlling them. And for the first time, I spent 4 months pouring into me.
Self-development. Yeah, no, I can relate to that, man. I think I did the same thing.
Yeah, ate well, worked out every day, read lots of books, started meditating, eating well, taking vitamins, all those kinds of stuff. And I just found my power. Once I let her go and let that go, it took a while for me to realize what I needed to do, because I was scared to pour into me because I felt I was being selfish. So that was the deepest, darkest, like, oh shit moment. Like, I better figure something out here or we're done. And I didn't like the alternative. I was not ready to go find somebody that was 10, 15 years younger than me and start all over again. I was like, no, I'm not ready to do that. So I wanted to figure it out. And we did together. It wasn't me alone. It was, we fought together. And again, I have some very close friends that have not made it. And that really pains me and makes me sad. And so I'd love to do anything I can to help anybody that's in those types of situations.
Absolutely. Appreciate you sharing that, because that's deep. I mean, that's deep, and it means a lot, because I think a lot of people in the military come out and they exactly like you said, they try to fix every situation. They try to fix the soldiers. They try to fix everything. And sometimes we just got to take a step back, me included. I had to do it myself and say, you know what? I'm not going to be able to, what they say, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, right? You got to just control what we can control. And really that's ourselves. You know what I mean? You know, our kids are going to make their own decisions. Your wife, everyone has free will, right? At the end of the day. And that was a hard pill to swallow for me too, because it's like you want to see the best in everybody, but it's up to them to decide. And maybe we have to be less of a officer or a drill sergeant or an NCO and more just like a human being. But it takes time for that to develop, because like you said, you can't army or military your spouse or your significant other, your kid's mom, but we all have, I mean, not all of us, but most of us are probably guilty of doing that, not on purpose, but that's just the way we lived our life while in uniform. So that hits home, man, even for me. So, and I'm sure other people listening, you know, can relate as well, but it's not about staying in that mindset. It's just moving forward and doing the best you can every day. And, you know, you pulled yourself out of the rut and now you're here doing your thing. So, I mean, what would your advice be to someone in the military that's yet to get out, going through the decades of service, going through no retirement ceremony, going through waiting and getting asked by a Marine at your own, you know, company for Amazon, hey, what disability rating are you? What would your advice be going through all that, you know, to them still in service or maybe even getting ready to get out right now?
Yeah, well, two main things. One is use what you've earned. You know, go seek that service. You know, go through. Go to the VA, whatever. I don't care what you hear about all the bad things that go on at the VA and doing disability. There are so many damn resources out there. Go get them. You know, don't be afraid. Don't be a tough guy. Go do it. And then the other thing is, yeah, get your benefits, but don't be, what's the word? Not needy, but you're still alive, you're still strong, you still have strengths, you have a lot of positive things. Take advantage of that. Don't just sit back in your chair and just wait for a retirement check. Or if you're already drawing your retirement check or a disability check, and I know some guys don't have the ability to work or do something different, but one of my mantras is retirement is a lie. And I just don't plan on stopping producing at some level, not necessarily working or a job or a business, but I'm going to be a participating member of society one way or the other. So find something to be a part of. A veterans group, a non-veterans group, a church group, whatever, just be part of something, you know, or run a business, a small business, do retail arbitrage on eBay or Amazon, you know, have something to keep you busy. I just implore everybody, just if you're not broken beyond repair, act like it. Is that strong enough? I mean, just like,
Gosh, yeah,
you know, this
gotta do
country,
something, man.
yeah, this country right now needs you. You're strong. Don't suck on the government's tit and just deal. You need to be strong for you and your family and your community. And
Absolutely.
we need a lot of that going in. I think in this next year, it's going to become more and more clear. I don't care who you're for. This next year is going to be chaos. And so take care of yourself and take care of your family.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like you said, start getting to go get those Elsa dolls, man.
Yeah. Right.
Nah,
I don't
man.
know if they sell for
What?
as much anymore.
No, they might not, but I guarantee there's something out there that will.
There
But
is. There
nah,
always
man.
is something.
Always, dude. And like the USA is a land of opportunity, man. I mean, this is the only place where you're gonna get clothes that are used or dolls on sale that you could get on another website and make profit on it. So the margins are there, the opportunities are there. You just got to find out what your calling is, you know, and find out something that you're interested in. Like you said, you don't have to be balls to the wall for your whole life, but at the same time, there's a lot of people that were, you know, in the military and they stopped doing stuff, they drop dead. Or there's
Yeah.
people that retire from work and they drop dead because they don't have anything to live for. So
Right.
you got to find out something to live for, whether it's your kids, your family, to give back to the community. Like Kevin has said as well, just find something and dive into it. But I want to ask you one more question, and then I'll open it up if we forgot anything or you want to plug
Okay.
yourself in with any information. what's one thing you miss about the military minus the camaraderie, because that's the common denominator for everybody.
That's the obvious answer that everybody gives, right?
Obviously, you got to get more creative. I keep telling everybody we got to get. I always plug that out there because we know that's the number one answer. But number two, minus the sandbags and the Humvees, what's number two?
I had some unique experiences. When I was part of NAOC, I got to do some cool stuff. I got to travel all over the world. And, when I was coming to the end of that mission, I asked, I'm like, can I please stay for another year? Yeah, I'm like, I do not want to leave because it was a great mission. And, lots of great people. Yeah, camaraderie, but just the cool stuff we got to see, got to do, playing with tanks, cool trucks, airplanes, ships. I got to do, ride on a hovercraft out into the Gulf, and go into the back of a aircraft carrier and all those kinds of things. I have some great fun stories of all those kinds of things. And I took it for granted at the time, but looking back, I'm like, even talking to you, you were bringing up some memories. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. There's just a lot of those things that I look back on. In fact, I told my wife today, I said, you know what? My mom's told me for years that you need to write a book. And I've always laughed it off, but I decided, in fact, this morning that I'm going to write a book, just because there's a lot of stories, but stories that are pertinent and they really make sense with kind of the mission of Warriors Unleashed that I'm going forward with. There's a lot of great stories that apply and just kind of how to learn to live life well.
Absolutely. I'll be on the lookout for that book, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you and growing. It seems like I'm kind of going down the same path as you a little bit, got the eBay and the real estate. So I'm glad that you answered the call to action, and I'm glad that you came on here to share your story on this episode. Did we leave anything out, or do you want to say anything else before we wrap it up for the day?
No, I think, like I said, we plugged my website a couple times, warriorsunleashed.com, and go there. There's some information. I'm going to be tweaking it. It needs some updating, but it's got some general information in there. It's pretty good. But yeah, I just, like I've already said, I just encourage everybody that if you're not a broken vet, don't act like it.
Absolutely. And if you guys made it this far, appreciate y'all listening in. Like, comment, subscribe on the YouTube. That way we can feed the algorithm. This can get pushed out to more people. If you guys are a veteran or you're in the military community, trying to see some change, and we can change the false narratives that plague the veteran community, you can reach out to the real 1%1 at gmail.com. I'd love to have you on an episode. Love to talk to you, help you in any way. I'm not a claim shark. I'm not looking for money, but I'm looking to get the right information out to all veterans. That way we can change the 22 a day. We can change the homelessness, and together we can make changes in the right direction. So, Kevin, I appreciate you being here today, sharing your story, opening up, being transparent and vulnerable. And if you guys listen in this far, I challenge you guys to be the best version of yourself every day. It's no easy task, but it's possible with a little bit of sweat equity and elbow grease. So thanks for listening in. And until next time, you guys have a blessed night. Take care.